My name is Sam, and this is Sky Fantasy Labs. Today, we're looking at the value of a transfer. When I recorded my beginner's guide, it was at the beginning of the season, and so everyone had 0 points and 50 transfers. We were all in the same position. Now we're at Overhaul, we're all in very different positions, with different amounts of points and different amounts of transfers. You will know your points, and hopefully have some idea of the number of transfers you have remaining. And by looking at these two tables, you can get some idea of how you're getting on. If you have, for example, 1,650 points and 30 transfers left, you are almost into the top 1,000, and you have 11 more transfers than the average player in the top 1,000. So your chances of finishing in the top 1,000 are pretty good. For most of you, you've used a number of transfers so far this season. You've used them for a variety of different reasons. My reasons are listed in the table below. I've used 24 transfers so far in my team, 10 for injury, 7 to take advantage of fixture swings, 4 to deal with suspensions, and 3 to cover captaincies. But which of these reasons is most important? To analyse this, I have started to ask for each scenario what would happen if I didn't make the transfer. If I don't move on an injured player, I have a player in my team scoring 0 points for a number of games, in some cases more than 5 games. This is the most serious loss of points. If I have a player who is suspended, they typically miss 1, 2 or 3 Premier League games, but the person I could transfer them to may play 4 games during that time. Therefore I lose 1 to 4 games from not making a transfer. This is the second most serious loss of points. When I transfer for the captaincy, I tend to gain 1 fixture, including the captaincy. This can effectively be thought of as 2 fixtures gained. Finally, when I transfer due to a fixture swing, I typically only gain 1 extra game, but I tend to get better quality fixtures from the player I'm bringing in. We now have a rough priority list to help us decide how to use our limited transfers. The most important use of transfers is to transfer out injured players, then to transfer out suspended players, then to make sure we cover captaincies, and finally, if we have any transfers left, to deal with fixture swings. So, how many transfers are we expected to need for each different type of move? I would say we expect about 6 to 10 transfers to deal with injuries, 2 to 4 to deal with longer suspensions, 2 to 4 to make sure we have captaincies, and then we can use any remaining transfers on fixture swings. This means that if you have, say, 18 or more transfers left, you should be able to cover every captaincy you want to. As Luton Burnley is the only game on Friday, you can start with a Luton or Burnley player to cover that captaincy. And from my calculations, if you have at least 18 transfers, this is what you should do. If you have less than 18 transfers, I recommend you don't start with a Luton or Burnley player unless you want them in your team long term, as I think you'll have better opportunities later on in the season to use your transfers. So, depending on how many transfers left, below is my strategy of when to use transfers. If you have a long-term injury, you should use a transfer on this, no matter what your transfer count is. If you have a 2 or 3 game suspension, you should use transfers on this if you have at least 14 transfers left. If you have a captaincy you need to cover, you should use transfers on this if you have at least 18 transfers left. And if you have at least 19 or more transfers, you should use these to deal with fixture swings. In this video, we've looked at the possible number of transfers people had, and we've talked through which scenarios people should use transfers for. We've pointed out that the more transfers you have, the more scenarios you should feel free to use your transfers on, whereas if you have relatively few transfers, you should be saving them for the long-term injuries which will no doubt hit your team at some point. That's it from me. See you next time, and best of luck with picking your overhaul teams.